There's a place in New York City that even the toughest criminals fear. A place where time stands still, where screams echo down concrete corridors, and the line between survival and insanity fades with every passing day. This isn't a movie set. This is Rikers Island, America's most notorious jail complex. For decades, Rikers has been a symbol of everything broken in the criminal justice system: violence, corruption, and human suffering packed behind razor wire just a few miles from Manhattan's glittering skyline. But behind those walls, there's another story. A story you were never meant to hear. Because inside Rikers, power isn't held by guards or the law. It's held by the inmates. And once you step through those gates, you either adapt or die. It begins the moment the bus stops at the bridge. New inmates call it the longest ride of your life. You can see the island in the distance, gray buildings rising out of the East River, like a fortress of despair. You can smell the salt in the air, hear the clanking of metal as officers prepare to unload the new arrivals. Every man on that bus knows, once the doors open, freedom is gone. They call Rikers hell on earth. But for some, it's home. Gang members, repeat offenders, men awaiting trial for murder, all thrown together in a place with no order, no safety, just chaos. And for Marcus Tone Williams, a 23-year-old from the Bronx, this was his new reality. He wasn't a killer. Not yet. He was just another kid caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or at least, that's what he told the cops. The intake room at Rikers is where fear has a scent. It's a mix of sweat, bleach, and despair. Hundreds of men waiting to be processed, their eyes darting from guard to inmate, inmate to wall. Officers bark orders, chains rattle, and paperwork shuffles like a factory line for lost souls. Marcus stands in line, clutching his property bag, just a few clothes, a Bible, and a photograph of his little sister. He's trying to look calm, but inside his heart is pounding. Across the room, two bloods spot him. They don't say a word, just a nod, a smirk, a signal. Marcus doesn't know it yet, but in Rikers, the first impression can decide whether you live or die. At Rikers, you don't just get assigned a cell. You get assigned a fate. Officers claim the classification system separates violent offenders from minor ones. But anyone who's been there knows it's all politics. Who you know, what you claim, which crew you run with. Marcus gets placed in C-95, the Anna M. Cross Center, one of the largest housing units on the island. Inmates call it the jungle. Within hours, he's approached by a man named Reese, a calm, sharp-eyed inmate who runs the phones on the block. "Yo, young blood," Reese says. "You talk to anyone, you talk to me first. Ain't no free calls here." That's when Marcus realizes Rikers isn't run by correctional officers. It's run by the inmates who've been there long enough to control everything from food to phones to fear itself. Respect inside Rikers isn't given. It's taken. Marcus learns that fast when another inmate, Big Dre, tries to take his commissary bag. In any other place, you might walk away. Here, walking away means you'll never stop running. That night, Marcus does something he'll never forget. He picks up a broken toothbrush, sharpened to a deadly point, and hides it in his sock. When Big Dre corners him, Marcus doesn't back down. There's a quick fight, a blur of motion, grunts, and shouts, and then silence. Blood drips onto the concrete floor. For the first time, Marcus feels what it means to survive inside Rikers. He's shaking, terrified but still alive. And from that moment, his name carries weight. There's more money inside Rikers than most people think. Not cash, but power. Every cell block has its own currency. Cigarettes, ramen noodles, commissary snacks, and favors. Smuggled cell phones move through laundry carts. Drugs? Always available. Brought in by guards, lawyers, even nurses. Reese, the same inmate who runs the phones, controls an underground operation, trading protection for goods, arranging debt collections, even making side deals with corrupt officers. Rikers isn't just a jail. It's a city within a city, with its own economy, hierarchy, and laws. And the most dangerous rule of all? Never owe anybody anything. Marcus watches all this from the corner of his cell, realizing that the real danger isn't the violence. It's the manipulation. It starts small, a stolen tray, a missed meal. But in Rikers, small things become wars. When a correctional officer roughs up an inmate from the wrong gang, the entire unit explodes. Chairs fly. Smoke fills the air. Sirens blare across the compound. Marcus is caught in the middle, ducking behind bunks as fists and blades flash through the chaos. He sees a guard get dragged into a cell. Another inmate set his mattress on fire. Within minutes, the entire block becomes a war zone. And as emergency teams rush in, batons swinging, gas hissing, Marcus makes eye contact with Reese, who's just watching. Calm, unmoved, like he knew this would happen all along. Later, Marcus learns the truth. The riot wasn't random. It was a message, a power move in an ongoing war between rival factions inside the island. After the riot, Marcus is thrown into the Bing, Rikers' infamous solitary confinement unit. A 6x9 cell, concrete walls, and no window. For 23 hours a day, he's alone with his thoughts. No sound, no movement, just the hum of the ventilation, and the scraping of metal when food is slid through the slot. Days blur into weeks. He starts talking to himself, counting the cracks in the wall just to stay sane. But one night, he hears something, a whisper through the vents. Another inmate's voice. It says, "They're coming for you, Tone." And just like that, the paranoia begins. In solitary, your mind becomes your worst enemy. Every sound, every shadow feels like it's hiding something. Marcus lies awake on the steel bed, staring at the ceiling. The whisper comes again. Same voice, same message. "They're coming for you, Tone." He calls out, but the voice never answers. Was it another inmate, or just his imagination slipping? He pounds on the door, screaming for a guard. No one comes. Hours later, he hears boots in the hallway, the unmistakable rhythm of correctional officers making rounds. But they stop right outside his cell. Then silence. A small envelope slides under the door. Marcus picks it up. No name, no return address. Inside, a folded piece of paper with one sentence written in pencil. "Trust no one, not even the ones wearing blue." When Marcus is finally released from solitary, things have changed. The block is quieter. Faces are missing. Whispers ripple through the cells about a cleanup, about people being transferred upstate or disappearing after the riot. Reese is still there, still calm, still running things. That night, Reese calls Marcus over. "Listen, young blood," he says, "you got heart. I can use that." He explains that there's a shipment coming in, a new phone, maybe some pills, something small but valuable. He wants Marcus to be the middleman. If he helps, he gets protection. If he refuses, well, everyone in Rikers knows what happens to those who say no. Marcus hesitates. He knows it's dangerous, but protection means survival. So he says yes. That night, a guard named Officer Mendez slips something under Marcus's mattress. A phone. And suddenly, Marcus is part of the machine. The phone becomes Marcus's lifeline and his curse. Every call he makes is monitored, every text a risk. He uses it to call his sister, Brianna, the only person left on the outside who still believes in him. She tells him she's been saving money for a lawyer. She believes he's innocent. Marcus wants to believe that too. But deep down, he knows, the longer he stays in Rikers, the harder it becomes to remember who he was before he got there. After the call, Reese corners him. "You talk to your sister again," he says quietly. "Make sure you tell her to send that money to the right people. Otherwise, she might get a visit she won't like." Marcus freezes. Reese smiles, not angry, not loud, just cold. And that's when Marcus realizes the island doesn't just cage men. It cages their families, too. Days pass. The block feels tense, like a storm waiting to break. Rumors spread, someone snitching. Phones are being confiscated, cells searched, privileges stripped. Marcus stays quiet, keeping his head down. But one morning, he wakes to the sound of boots pounding down the corridor. Williams, hands on the wall. Officers rush in, tear his cell apart, flipping his mattress, dumping his food, ripping his photos. And there it is, the phone, planted right where Officer Mendez told him to keep it. Marcus tries to explain, but it doesn't matter. They've already decided. He's dragged out of the cell, thrown back into isolation, charged with possession of contraband. As the steel door slams, he hears laughter echoing down the hall. Reese's voice. Marcus finally understands. He wasn't part of Reese's operation. He was the fall guy. Weeks turn into months. No word from Brianna. No visits. No mail. Then out of nowhere, a new face appears at his door, an older man in plain clothes. He introduces himself as Detective Harlan. "I know you didn't plant that phone," he says, "but I also know you've seen things. Things we need to know." Harlan tells Marcus he's part of an internal investigation, one targeting a network of corrupt officers smuggling drugs and cell phones into Rikers. The same network Reese is working with. If Marcus cooperates, they'll transfer him to protective custody. If not, they'll leave him where he is and hope he survives. Marcus thinks of his sister. He thinks of Reese's cold stare. And for the first time since he arrived, he decides to fight back. Marcus agrees to help the detective. He gives names, details, even the shift schedules of the officers involved. In exchange, Harlan promises to get him out. But days turn into weeks and nothing happens. Then, one night, the cell door opens, not the usual way, not at the usual time. 2 officers step in. No words, no handcuffs, just glares. Marcus's heart races. Something isn't right. They escort him down the hall, past the main block, toward a dark corridor he's never seen before. At the end is a door with no number. Inside, Reese. Surprised, Reese says, smirking, "Told you, young blood, the blue shirts don't protect you. They work for me." Harlan's investigation? A setup. Marcus had just exposed himself to the very people running the operation. They beat him that night. Bad. But they don't kill him. Instead, Reese leans close and whispers, "You've got heart. That's why I'm giving you a choice. You can be part of this, or you could be gone." Marcus doesn't answer. He just stares at the floor, blood dripping from his nose, realizing there's no way out through the front door. If he's going to survive, he needs to escape from the inside. He starts taking mental notes, guard rotations, camera blind spots, food delivery schedules. It's not just about breaking out. It's about exposing everything. And as he lies awake that night planning, he can almost hear the city outside, faint, distant, like a dream he's not ready to give up on. Weeks later, Marcus gets another phone, smuggled in by an inmate loyal to him now. He uses it to record everything. The guards dealing contraband, the inmates working for them, even Reese giving orders. He hides a phone inside a vent, uploading the clips through a Wi-Fi hotspot someone hacked from the infirmary. He sends everything to one person, Brianna. The message is simple. "If anything happens to me, release this." The plan works, at first. Brianna gets the files, and within days, she leaks them online. The footage spreads like wildfire. Hidden cameras showing guards smuggling drugs. Officers handing out phones. Reese, the calm, untouchable inmate, giving orders to men in uniform. News stations pick it up. The Department of Corrections denies everything. But the evidence is too real, too raw, too damning. Within 48 hours, Rikers is on lockdown. Investigators swarm the island. Every inmate is questioned. Every guard, every corridor, every file, under scrutiny. Marcus waits in his cell, heart pounding, knowing his name is the one no one can find out. But inside Rikers, nothing stays secret for long. It happens just before dawn. The lights flicker. The alarms cut out. Marcus wakes to the sound of footsteps. Heavy, fast, deliberate. Someone's coming. Before he can react, his cell door opens. A hand grabs him by the throat, slams him against the wall. It's Mendez, the same guard who planted the phone. His eyes are bloodshot, his voice trembling with rage. "You think you can burn down the house and walk out alive?" he hisses. He draws his baton, ready to strike. Then a deafening noise. Boom! The lights flash back on. Sirens blare. Officers flood the hallway, shouting orders. Mendez freezes, drops the baton. Behind him, 2 federal agents storm in. Step away from the inmate, one yells. And just like that, it's over. The same system that once buried Marcus just saved him. Marcus sits in an interrogation room, bruised but alive. Across the table, not a detective this time, but a federal prosecutor. They thank him for what he did. Tell him the recordings triggered one of the biggest corruption probes in Rikers history. Dozens of officers arrested, multiple inmates transferred, millions of dollars in illegal trade exposed. But when Marcus asks about Reese, the room goes silent. The prosecutor slides a file across the table. Marcus opens it, and his blood runs cold. Inside is a photo. Reese. But the name on the file isn't Reese. Leonard Reese Turner, a former correctional officer. He was fired years ago for disciplinary reasons. Somehow, he found his way back onto the island. Not as a guard, but as an inmate, running the same operation from the inside. Rikers had eaten him alive and turned him into the very monster he used to lock up. A few days later, Marcus is quietly moved off the island. No farewells, no warnings, just a new uniform and a bus headed upstate. As the ferry pulls away from Rikers, he looks back through the small window. The skyline of New York glows in the distance, beautiful, indifferent. He thinks of everyone still trapped in there, of the screams at night, of Reese. And for the first time, he understands something that no camera could ever capture. Rikers isn't just a place. It's a system, a cycle, a machine that breaks people down until they can't tell who they were or what they become. Months later, Marcus's footage becomes part of federal investigation. Prosecutors use it to build cases against over 30 officials. The city promises reform, but the violence doesn't stop. New faces take old positions. Old systems rebuild under new names. The headlines fade. The world moves on. Only Marcus, sitting in a distant upstate facility, staring through another set of bars, knows what really changed. Nothing. Rikers didn't die. It just learned how to hide better. One morning, Marcus receives a letter. No return address, just his name, neatly written. Inside, a single line. You did good, young blood. But remember, the island never forgets. Signed, R.T. Reese Turner. Marcus stares at the letter, unsure if it's a threat or a warning. Maybe both. He folds it carefully, places it under his pillow, and whispers to himself, "Neither do I." Today, Rikers Island still stands, a patch of land floating between 2 boroughs, between justice and hell. Politicians call for its closure. Activists demand change. But for the men and women who live behind those walls, the scars remain long after the gates open. For Marcus Tone Williams, Rikers was more than a sentence. It was a mirror. It showed in the darkness in others and in himself. And maybe that's the real horror of Rikers Island. Not the gangs, not the guards, not even the violence, but the truth that once you've been inside long enough, you start to understand it. Rikers Island isn't just a story about crime. It's a story about survival, corruption, and the human cost of a broken system. Every name in this story could belong to someone real. Every scream could echo from a real cell tonight. So the next time you hear about Rikers on the news, remember Marcus, remember Reese, and remember, sometimes the scariest prisons aren't made of concrete and steel. They're made of power and silence.